Hey everybody, tonight's video is called Babylon's Idols and the True God, and tonight we continue our pass-through study here in the book of Isaiah, where we're looking at Babylon's dead idols, and we're looking at the true living God of Israel. So in Isaiah chapter 46, it's only 13 verses, so this video should be shorter than many of the last several. But Isaiah 46 verse 1 and 2 says, Bel bows down, Nebo stoops. Their idols were on the beast and on the cattle. Your carriages were heavily loaded, a burden to a weary beast. They stoop, they bow down together. They could not deliver the burden, but have themselves gone into captivity. So the two most prominent gods in Babylon, one of them is named Bel, and another spelling for Bel is Baal, and that's how we most commonly think of that god. Little g god is as of Baal. And Baal was the Phoenician chief god of Babylon. And Nebo was extensively worshipped and is shown by the proper names compounded from Nebuchadnezzar, Nabopolassar, and Nebuzaradan. And Nebo is the god of wisdom, and some theologians would argue that Bel, like R.C. Sproul argued, Bel should be known as Marduk, the most powerful god in the Babylonian pantheon. And all we need to know is neither has any true power. Neither of these two gods have the power of wisdom to offer. And in verse 2, when Cyrus came, even the gods were taken into exile. And these idols could not save themselves from being laid down on the backs of beasts and hauled away. Let alone can these little g gods save anybody, any people who worship them. And Bel, it was also in the name of Belshazzar, and Nebo, as mentioned, was Nebuchadnezzar. So in our last chapter or video, we saw Isaiah declare that every knee will bow to the Lord. And here he pictures the gods of the great Babylon stooping low in humiliation. In verse 3 and 4, it says, Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, who have been upheld by me from birth, who have carried from the womb. Even to your old age I am he, and even to gray hairs I will carry you. I have made and I will bear, even I will carry and will deliver you. So the God of Israel isn't helping, or the God of Israel isn't helpless like the idols. The idols are helpless. And in his strength, he has sustained and will sustain the helpless Israel through every circumstance. And in verse 4, we see the Lord uses the first person pronoun 5 times to emphasize his personal involvement in delivering Israel. And remember that remnant is a small group that's saved out of the judgment. And the Lord's care is like that of a mother of her children. The Lord's care is as tender, attentive, and with the best interests of his people in mind, as we also find back in Isaiah 44 verse 2. And unlike the powerless idols, the Lord is in constant care of his people from before their birth to their old age. And you can find that in Psalm 71 verse 9 and Psalm 71 verse 18. And a question I want to challenge you with is, do you have to carry your little g gods, or does your big capital G God carry you? In verse 5 through 7, it says, In whom will you liken me and make me equal, and compare me, that we should be alike? And they lavish gold out of the bag, and weigh silver on the scales. They hire a goldsmith, and he makes it a god. They prostrate themselves, yes, they worship. They bear it on the shoulder. They carry it and set it in its place, and it stands from its place. It shall not move. Though one cries out to it, yet it cannot answer, nor save him out of his trouble. So the human origin and utter impotence of idols render themselves unfit for comparison with the capital G God of Israel, as seen in Isaiah 40, verse 18 through 20. And idols, they cannot move or do anything to save or to judge. In verse 8 through 10, remember this and show yourselves men. Recall to mind, O you transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. So the prophet calls on the readers to recall the impotence of the idols that they worship in transgression of God's law. And in verse 9, the readers are to recall all the past history of the fulfilled prophecies, as well as the miraculous deliverances, such as that of Egypt and providential blessings that Israel has experienced. And all of these are ample evidence that our God is monotheistic. There is only one God. In verse 10, unlike Baal or Nebo, who have neither power nor wisdom, the Lord's power establishes what his wisdom decrees. And there is no power on earth or heaven that can stand against the sovereign will of God. Nothing can thwart God's plan. And God knows the end of every matter. God knows the end of every course of every circumstance, just as clearly as anyone else can see the beginning of it. And God knows the end from the beginning, because he's more than just a passive observer learning through events occurring. He is actually directing history. And God's counsel shall stand. His works and his plans never fail, because he will do all that is his pleasure. And God is in control over all things. And because of that, we can have tremendous courage in God, knowing and remember who he is and what he does as we grow in understanding God more. In verse 11 through 13, it says, calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a far country. Indeed, I have spoken, I will bring it to pass. I have purposed it, I will also do it. Listen to me, you stubborn-hearted, who are far from righteousness. I will bring my righteousness near, it shall not be far off. My salvation shall not linger, and I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. So, I personally believe in verse 11, calling a bird a prey from the east. I believe that is speaking of this man named Cyrus that I mentioned of, who God summoned to conquer Babylon and to return a remnant to Israel to the end of the 70-year captivity, a century and a half later, after Isaiah wrote the prophecy, as in accordance of Isaiah 44 verse 28 and Isaiah 45 verse 1. And in verse 12, these are the transgressors in verse 8. Back in the book of Numbers 14 verse 3, some in the first Exodus looked back to Egypt, and some in the second Exodus remained in Babylon, doubting that the Lord could really bring about his promised salvation and restore the glory of his people, at least any time in the near future. And in verse 13, at God's appointed time, the salvation of Israel will become reality and result in the Messiah's future kingdom of righteousness, as also seen in Isaiah 61:3, Isaiah 62:11, Joel 3:17, and Zechariah chapter 12 verse 10, into Zechariah 13 verse 1, and so on. And so tonight, to wrap up tonight's video, we look at the idols of the nations that are carried into captivity. We see the false gods are carried away on carriages. And in verse 3 and 4, we see the Lord, the true God of Israel, capital G, will carry his people. And I want to read a few verses in the book of the gospel according to Luke. It's an encouragement that should be encouraging to us. So Luke chapter 12, verse 6 and 7, it says, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 copper coins, and not one of them is forgotten before God? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows." So this is the same fatherly love and compassion, that the care that Jesus spoke about. And when we understand that God made us, and when we understand that we are valuable to God, then we can trust him to carry us through no matter what happens in life. And in verse 5 and 7, we see the Lord can save his people when even the little g gods, the idols, are helpless. In verse 8 to 10, we see it moves into a section of calls. We see in 8 through 10 shows a call to remember the Lord knows the beginning to the end. Remember that God is sovereign. In the chapter, it ends with the call to remember that the Lord will bring a deliverer to Zion. And I want to look at Romans chapter 11, verse 25, starting out. Romans 11:25 says, "For I do not desire, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own opinion, that blindness in part has happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, as is written, the deliverer will come out of Zion, and he will turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is my covenant with them, when I take away their sins." So we see the Apostle Paul re-illustrates the covenant that we find in Isaiah 46, verse 13. And we'll see you next tomorrow, Lord willing, as we're going to look at Babylon being brought low. So like I promised, nice shorter video, probably about half the time we normally been in. And I hope that you have a great weekend up ahead. Have a great rest of your evening. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.